when the longest UFC win streaks came to an end. That's what I want to talk about today across the board. I want to talk about the win streak, how good was it, the finishing rate, like how close they were to a title shot, or if they were on a win streak that when they were champion already. I want to go through the whole thing and give my opinion on all the longest UFC win streaks and what happened to the fighter after the win streak. Did they rebound? Did they completely get cooked? That's what the video is going to be on about today, guys. Let's start off with one of the longest win streaks and most impressive win streaks in UFC history from Charles "Do Bronx" Oliveira, who had an 11-fight win streak. One of the most electric and exciting 11-fight win streaks we've ever seen in the UFC. He might be the only 11-fight win streak in the UFC because other fighters have went on to get 12, 13, 15, and 16. I don't know if anyone's gotten 11 outside of Charles. Either way, starting off his win streak, he had a submission. What's crazy about this win streak is he finished all 10 of 11 opponents, which is crazy. Subbed Clay Guida, subbed Christo Giagos, subbed Jim Miller, subbed David Tamer, TKO Nick Lentz, KO Jared Gordon, subbed Kevin Lee, decision Tony Ferguson. Of course, crazy man Tony Ferguson would be the guy to make it to a decision against Oliveira on his win streak. TKO versus Michael Chandler, which was for the belt. He won the strap. Submission versus Poirier, defended his belt. And submission versus Gaethje, defended his belt. 2 title defenses. I don't care if he missed weight against Gaethje. That was BS. I count Charles as having 2 title defenses. And yeah, man, in my opinion, this is one of the most impressive win streaks in UFC history. Not because necessarily the competition was incredible, but more so that he finished 10 of 11 wins. It was super exciting. He went for the kill every single fight. And Charles Oliveira, before this win streak, was known as a journeyman. He was losing a lot of fights. He switched to Shootbox Academy in Brazil, and he went on an absolute tear after that. And even today, he's still the number 1 contender at lightweight. Well, the number 2 contender outside of Arman Tsarukyan. He's still the number 2 lightweight in the world, coming off a win. So Charles Oliveira, his win streak was ended by Islam Makhachev. Islam submitted Charles, which was crazy because going into the fight, the narrative was that if it goes to the ground, Islam might be in trouble, which, to be fair, the grappling was a stalemate, but Islam capitalized off of dropping Charles and jumped on top of him, secured an arm triangle choke, choked him out. Charles taps, and yeah, Islam ends his win streak. After his win streak, Charles was going 2-2. Not bad, but also not the greatest. 2-2, a loss to Islam and a loss to Arman Tsarukyan. The 2 best guys in the division, so you know what? That isn't bad. And he's beaten... Who has he beaten since his win streak? He's beaten Beneil Dariush, and he's beaten Michael Chandler for a second time. So, yeah, man, Charles's win streak, probably one of my favorite win streaks to watch, and he became the champion, which... Gotta love Charles Oliveira becoming the champion. One of the most wholesome moments in UFC history. But yeah, 11-fight win streak came to an end by Islam. Let's get on to the next win streak, which was Alexander Volkanovski, a 12-fight win streak in the UFC. People forget, man. Volkanovski went on a 12-fight win streak. 3 of those wins being versus Max Holloway. But Volkanovski debuted in the UFC back in 2016, securing a TKO over Yusuke Kasuya. Then he got a decision win over Mizuto Hirota. Well, he was fighting these Asian guys, apparently. A decision versus Shane Young. TKO Jeremy Kennedy. A decision versus Darren Elkins. TKO Chad Mendez. Decision versus Aldo. Decision versus Max. A split decision versus Max. A decision versus Ortega. A TKO versus Korean Zombie. And a decision versus Max. Dang, Volk Loki, a decision merchant. How many decisions in this win streak? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 out of 12 fights were decisions. But nonetheless, on this win streak, Volkanovski became the pound-for-pound number 1 fighter in the world, which was super impressive with former champion wins over guys like Jose Aldo and Max Holloway 3 times. And he also beat Chad Mendez, who was a mainstay in the featherweight division. He also beat former title challenger and Brian Ortega, Chan Sung Jung. Like, Volkanovski's win streak was absolutely legendary. And beating Max Holloway 3 times in the middle of his prime during a 12-fight win streak is absolutely insane. His win streak was also ended by Islam Makhachev, which people don't give credit to Islam enough for that. He ended 2 of the longest win streaks in UFC history. Like, is there another fighter in UFC history that has ended win streaks over 10 2 times in his own win streak? No, I don't think so. He ended Charles Oliveira's 11-fight win streak, and he ended Alexander Volkanovski's 12-fight win streak. So people forget, man, Islam Makhachev is the win streak slayer. Either way, since the win streak, Volkanovski has gone 1-2, securing a win over Yair Rodriguez, but losing by KO to Ilia Topuria and Islam in the rematch. But yeah, man, Bald Volk was a different beast. This guy became one of the greatest fighters we've ever seen, some of the greatest striking, and whenever he was going in the first Islam fight, people were saying that he was going to get destroyed because he was a smaller man coming up from featherweight. Islam's just going to destroy him in the grappling and choke him out, and he gave Islam the toughest fight of his entire career. Arguably could have beat Islam, but I do think the decision fairly went to Islam. But look at Islam's face after that fight. He looked like he got put into a blender, the most damage he's ever taken, and he looked terrified in that 5th round. Volkanovski took the 5th round, but it was 3-2 Makhachev, and yeah, man, I will say, ever since the Volk's win streak ended, post Yair Rodriguez fight, he has not been the same guy. 2 KO losses, and it's tough, man, for Volk. He's 36 years old now, supposed to be coming back sometime soon. Hopefully, it's not against Topuria and he gets a win before he gets the Topuria rematch. Either way, Volkanovski with one of the most legendary win streaks in UFC history, a 12-fight win streak ended by Islam Makhachev, 1-2 since the win streak. Yeah, man. I think Volk still got some gas in the tank, and if he doesn't fight Ilia Topuria right away, he might be able to secure a few wins. Let's get on to the next win streak, which was a 12-fight win streak by Tony Ferguson. Now, what people don't talk about Tony Ferguson's win streak is that he finished 9 of those 12 wins, which to me is extremely impressive. You know, researching this video and looking at how many finishes each fighter got, I was super impressed that Tony Ferguson went on a 12-fight win streak against pretty decent competition. Not the best competition, but pretty decent competition, and finished 9 of the 12 guys. Now, I myself think that people overrate this win streak a little bit. It wasn't the craziest win streak, but nonetheless, a 12-fight win streak at lightweight, arguably the hardest division in the entire UFC, is super impressive. Starting off that win streak with a submission over Mike Rio, a KO versus Katsunori Kikuno, a split decision over Danny Castillo, submitted Abel Trujillo, submitted Gleason Tibau, decision versus Josh Thompson, submitted Edson Barboza, submitted Lando Venata, decision versus Rafael Dos Anjos, submitted Kevin Lee, a TKO win versus Pettis, and a TKO win over Donald Cerrone. People forget, man, Tony Ferguson in his prime was an absolute submission legend. I mean, this guy got, 6 out of 12 of his wins were by submission during his 12-fight win streak. And, man, he should have become the undisputed champion. Tony Ferguson, after winning the interim belt against Kevin Lee, 100% should have been promoted to the undisputed champion whenever Conor McGregor didn't defend his belt and went on to fight Floyd Mayweather. But instead, he was stripped of his interim title the second that Khabib versus Ali Quinta got booked together. And he was actually scheduled to fight Khabib 5 different times. And I think 2 or 3 of those times were for the belt. It sucks we never got to see it, man. Tony Ferguson in his prime was one of the most scary fighters we've ever seen. There's a picture of some of his opponents after his fights during his 12-fight win streak where he just absolutely bladed their faces up, cut them, battered them pillar to post, but it all came down to a crashing in at UFC 249 where he lost to Justin Gaethje. Justin Gaethje put an absolute beating on Tony Ferguson. Still to this day, I think this is the worst beating of Tony Ferguson's career, and it's no secret that after the Justin Gaethje fight, his record is 0-8 since. He went from 12-0 to 0-8, which is absolutely insane. This is got to be the longest win streak to longest losing streak, opposites in UFC history. And I think he took a life-changing amount of damage versus Justin Gaethje, and that's why we haven't seen him win a fight again. Go watch the Gaethje fight, rounds 3, 4, and 5. Absolutely brutal damage by Justin Gaethje. Tony Ferguson was in there in the first couple rounds. It was very competitive. He dropped Justin Gaethje in round 2, but at the end of it, Justin Gaethje was just too much for Tony Ferguson. Literally took a lot of his brain cells and ended up just winning by 5th round TKO. And yeah, like I said, man, he has not been the same guy since. On an 8-fight losing streak, I think he's been finished in his 8 losses. He's been finished 5 times and went to decision 3 times. So Tony Ferguson needs to retire. He's an absolute legend of the sport. In my opinion, he should have been promoted to the undisputed champ during his win streak. And yeah, man, one of the most insane win streaks. Not the highest level of competition, but when you talk about a guy who submitted half his opponents and even got 3 finishes by KO and TKO in that win streak, it's very impressive. Shout out to my boy Tony, but we need to see you be a coach. No more fights for you. Let's get on to the next win streak, which was Amanda Nunes. Now, Amanda Nunes went on one of the, for women's standards, for UFC fight, she went on one of the most legendary win streaks in UFC history. A 12-fight win streak, and in that 12-fight win streak, how many decisions did she get? Only 4. Finished 8 wins. Started off in 2015, I believe, versus Shayna Baszler, a TKO. Submitted Sarah McMahon. Beat Valentina Shevchenko by decision. Submitted Miesha Tate. TKO'd Ronda Rousey, destroyed her. Decision Valentina Shevchenko again. People forget, man. Amanda Nunes beat Valentina Shevchenko twice. A TKO versus Raquel Pennington. KO'd Chris Cyborg. That was Chris Cyborg's first loss in over 12 years or something crazy. Head kicked and finished Holly Holm. Head kicked the head kicker. Destroyed GDR. Decision win versus Felicia Spencer, which was kind of weird. I thought she'd finish her. And a submission versus Megan Anderson before her streak got ended by the most unlikely fighter to end her streak. It was Juliana Pena, one of the most mid fighters in the entire division, ended Amanda Nunes' win streak. Amanda Nunes uncharacteristically looked off in that fight, and she tapped prematurely to a rear naked choke. Claimed she was sick before the fight, so who knows? She did come back to absolutely destroy Juliana Pena in the rematch, and her record since losing on her win streak was 2-1. But there's no denying on her win streak. If you look at the girl she beat, look, she has 2 wins over Valentina Shevchenko, former champion; Miesha Tate, former champion; Ronda Rousey, former champion; Raquel Pennington, former champion; Chris Cyborg, former champion; Holly Holm, former champion; Jermaine Renemy, former champion. You get the point. How many former champions is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of her 12-fight win streak were against former champions, which is absolutely insane. She's actually beat every single UFC bantamweight champion there's ever been, which is super impressive. So, yeah, man, the Lioness, Amanda Nunes, her 12-fight win streak, I think it's the greatest in women's MMA history, and I don't think it'll be topped just because of the amount of champions she beat, and she was also a double champion. I don't rate that too high considering it was women's featherweight, which is pretty much dead, which only created for Chris Cyborg. But yeah, she did it right, man. She came back to beat Juliana in the rematch, and I think she ended her career on beating Aldana by destroying her, and then she retired. So yeah, respect to Amanda Nunes. Bounced back, went off into the sunset, as you should. 12-fight win streak, the longest win streak in WMMA history. Let's get on to the next win streak, which was a 13-fight win streak by Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson. And in that 13-fight win streak, he achieved 11 title defenses, which is absolutely insane. Demetrius Johnson was the inaugural flyweight champion in the UFC, racking off 13 wins in a row, capturing the flyweight title in his debut against Ian McCall. Not his debut, in his the inaugural flyweight championship debut of the UFC versus Ian McCall. Then he went to split decision over Joseph Benavidez. Decisions John Dodson, subs John Moraga, a KO versus Joe Benavidez in the rematch. Decisions Ale Bagatinov, submission versus Chris Carriazo, submission versus Kiyoshi Oraguchi, decision versus John Dodson, a TKO versus Henry Cejudo, decision versus Tim Elliott, submission versus Wilson Hayes, and submission versus Ray Borg. Towards the end of this win streak, Demetrius Johnson was submitting black belts like Wilson Hayes. He was literally emoting on guys like Ray Borg. He is the best flyweight we've ever seen and one of the greatest mixed martial artists we've ever seen. And yeah, man, who knows how Demetrius Johnson's career would have went if he wouldn't have dropped that very close decision to Henry Cejudo. He would have been on a 14-fight win streak, and record after his win streak was 5-2. He went on to fight in one championship and lose one time to Adriano Moraes by KO, but came back to beat him twice, once by KO and once by decision, which was super impressive. Was a champion forever in the UFC, 11 title defenses, a champion in one with title defenses there. But it is crazy to think that the guy he destroyed in the first round, Henry Cejudo, was the guy to come back and take his belt off of him. It was a close fight, and you definitely can argue that DJ won that fight. But Henry Cejudo fought smart, utilized takedowns to secure a 3-2 victory over Demetrius Johnson to end this 13-fight win streak. And let me just say this, man. 13-fight win streak can be done again. 11 title defenses, that will never be done again, in my opinion. Modern-day UFC fighters are too good to let one champion defend 11 times. So I think Demetrius Johnson will hold on to the 11 title defenses for a long time. But no denying his 13-fight win streak was one of the most impressive in UFC history. The thing that his 13-fight win streak lacked, in my opinion, was good levels of comp. If you look at his competition, it ain't the best. We got to keep it 100. But he did what he was supposed to do. He absolutely dominated the competition. Didn't really have any close fights. Maybe the first fight versus Joseph Benavidez was a split decision. But outside of that, and a close submission attempt versus Tim Elliott, outside of that, he completely dominated in this 13-fight win streak. So respect to Demetrius Johnson, one of the GOATs. Let's get on to the next one, which was a 13-fight win streak by Maximus Holloway. Now, Max Holloway, people forget, man, he was on a 13-fight win streak before going to lightweight to challenge for the interim belt. And on that 13-fight win streak, he got a TKO versus Will Chope, submitted Andre Philly, a TKO versus Clay Collard, KO'd Akira Kurasani, a decision versus Cole Miller, a submission versus Cub Swanson. TKO win versus Charles Oliveira. It was an injury. Decision Jeremy Stevens. Decision Ricardo Lamas. TKO versus Anthony Pettis. 2 TKOs back-to-back over Jose Aldo and a TKO over Brian Ortega. I got to keep it 100, guys. I do think that Max Holloway's 13-fight win streak is very top-heavy. It wasn't the best. It has some name value on it, but I don't rate the win over Charles too high. Jeremy Stevens is not great. Ricardo Lamas is a journeyman. Anthony Pettis at featherweight was never eh. And then the 2 wins against Jose Aldo and the first guy to beat Brian Ortega, absolutely legendary. But the other wins are kind of meh. But, man, Max Holloway was in his absolute prime on his 13-fight win streak, won the belt, went on to defend it 2 times, I believe, against Aldo in the rematch and then Ortega. Before his streak, he defended it 3 times. I think he defended it again against Edgar is once he went down to featherweight, because he did go up to 155 after his win streak, or during his win streak, to face Dustin Poirier for the interim belt. And Dustin Poirier was the man to take Max Holloway's win streak. Yeah, man, Dustin Poirier was just too powerful, too big for Max Holloway, who took the fight on somewhat short notice, and in my opinion, didn't properly bulk into the lightweight division. So he was facing a much bigger and powerful guy in Dustin Poirier, who actually already had a win over him earlier in his career. And since losing to Dustin Poirier, Max Holloway has went a respectable 6-5, not the best. Honestly, I thought he did better, but 6-5 since losing to Dustin Poirier. Of course, 3 of those losses coming to Volkanovski, 1 coming to Topuria, and 1 coming to Dustin Poirier. So he's only lost to the absolute best of the best since losing his belt and ending his win streak to Dustin Poirier. But got to give some respect to my boy Jerome Maximus Holloway. He's still doing the dang thing. I think he started this win streak when he was like, 24, 25 years old. And he's only 33 now, just making his way into the lightweight division. I think he's going to be able to do some damage up there. Do I think he'll be able to become champion? No. I will say I think Max Holloway's past his prime, but one of 2 fighters to go on a 13-fight win streak in UFC history. So you got to put some respect on my boy Jerome's Maximus Holloway's name. Yeah, let's see what he can do at lightweight. Let's get on to the next one, which was the second longest win streak in UFC history. Kamaru Usman, the Nigerian Nightmare. On this win streak, he went on a 15-fight win streak and was so close to tying Anderson Silva. You won't believe how close if you saw the second Leon fight. And he also became the welterweight champion and a #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world while on this win streak, while securing 5 title defenses. Starting off his UFC win streak with a submission over Hader Hassan. I don't know who that is. Decision Leon Edwards. Decision Alexander Yakovlev. Decision Warley Alves. Decision Sean Strickland. People forget, man. Kamaru Usman has a win over Sean Strickland. KO'd Sergio Moraes. Decision versus Emil Meek. Decision Damian Maia. Decision Rafael dos Anjos. Decision Tyron Woodley. Low-key, Kamaru Usman was a decision merchant up until his title run. TKO Colby Covington. Decision Jorge Masvidal. TKO'd Gilbert Burns. KO'd Jorge Masvidal in the rematch. Brutal KO. And then got a decision win over Colby Covington in their rematch. His 15-fight win streak was ended by Leon Edwards, and man, we can't even begin to tell you how close he was to tying Anderson Silva's record. Kamaru Usman was 1 minute away from beating Leon Edwards by a dominant decision and keeping his belt and going to a 16-fight win streak with 6 title defenses to tie Anderson Silva's record. But with 1 minute to go, Leon Edwards landed a Hail Mary head kick, putting Kamaru Usman out cold, landing a head kick, putting him out cold, and ending his 15-fight win streak. And Kamaru Usman has not won a fight since. Kamaru Usman does not have a win since 2021, going on 4 years. He's 0-3 since the KO to Leon Edwards. And yeah, man, or including that fight, he's 0-3. Has not won a fight since. And 37 going on 38, has terrible knees. Who knows how Kamaru Usman can come back this year and look. But in my opinion, he is going to be past his prime. He had an absolute amazing 15-fight win streak. It is very top heavy. I mean, he does have some great names though. But there were rematches, Colby Covington and Jorge Masvidal. But overall, I would rate his 15-fight win streak pretty good. Pretty good. He beat some great guys, and yeah, man, was so close to tying Anderson Silva. And that Anderson Silva curse is real, guys. Nobody can beat Anderson Silva's record. Islam is right now going to challenge to become tied to Kamaru Usman in second place this weekend versus Arman Tsarukyan. He's on a 14-fight win streak. If he beats Arman, he'll be tied for second place. But let's see. But yeah, Kamaru Usman, 15-0 to 15-3 in the UFC. And yeah, man, it's tough. Let's get on to the next one and the last one. The longest win streak in UFC history. Anderson the Spider Silva. And one thing I noticed when researching Anderson Silva's win streak was how Although I can agree his competition was never the greatest, man, talk about finishing 14 of 16 opponents in a win streak is absolutely insane. Only 2 decision wins in a 16-fight win streak in the UFC. Like I said, I know his competition wasn't the greatest, but you have to put some respect on Anderson Silva's name. He was doing what he was supposed to, and that was destroying all these people that he was ahead of in the competition, becoming the middleweight champion in his second UFC fight, and going on a 16-fight win streak with 10 title defenses. Anderson Silva's the middleweight GOAT. He's a bona fide legend of the sport. One of the greatest strikers we've ever seen in the sport. Just flashy, 10 steps ahead of his opponent. If you want to see a guy absolutely styling an opponent, go watch Forrest Griffin versus Anderson Silva. That was one of the biggest striking mismatches I've ever seen in any UFC fight. But he started off his UFC career KOing Chris Lieben, and in the second fight, he KO'd Rich Franklin for the title. A TKO versus Travis Lutter, TKO'd Nate Marquardt, TKO'd Rich Franklin in the rematch. He actually has a submission win over Dan Henderson. People forget, man. Anderson Silva submitted Dan Henderson. KO'd James Irvin. TKO'd Patrick Cote by injury. Decision versus Tyler Latis. KO'd Forrest Griffin, styled on him. Decision Damian Maia, very boring fight. Submitted Chael Sonnen after being dominated for 23 and a half minutes. Secured a triangle, one of the most clutch performances. KO'd Vitor Belfort, one of the most legendary front kicks to the face in UFC history. TKO versus Yushin Okami. Destroyed Chael Sonnen in the rematch, and TKO'd Stephan Bonner for the last win of his 16-fight win streak before it all came crashing down versus Chris Weidman. He was showboating on Chris Weidman in the fight, and Chris Weidman was winning the fight. Anderson Silva was kind of in there just showboating, like, haha, what are you going to do? And Chris Weidman caught him on the chin, put him out cold, ending his 16-fight win streak. And, man, Anderson Silva had the biggest downfall, or the second biggest downfall after Tony Ferguson. After his win streak got snapped, he went from 16-0 to 1-7-1 after his win streak. Only won 1 fight, 1 no contest, losing 7 fights in the process. To be fair to Anderson, he was 38 years old at the time his win streak was snapped, and he fought until he was like 44, 45 in the UFC. And he arguably could have won his fight against Michael Bisping, but like I said, man, a bona fide legend. If you go watch Anderson Silva's highlights in the striking, I mean, this guy was absolutely styling on those guys. I know they were cab drivers, but he was absolutely styling and going into the matrix in most of his fights. And yeah, one of the most impressive strikers in UFC history. And what else is there to be said? A 16-fight win streak. He's been holding this record since he beat Stephan Bonner. That would be in, 2012? I think he got the win over Stephan Bonner. So this win streak record is 12 years standing. And yes, he has a longer win streak than John Jones. I'm not giving it to John Jones because John Jones has a no contest due to testing positive for steroids. So yes, that 100% disqualifies him. But yeah, this video, I just wanted to go through the longest win streaks in UFC history, talk about their records post win streaks and who they faced, how many finishes. I thought this would be a fun idea, just because the inspiration behind this video was Islam Makhachev on the heels of a 15-fight win streak if he beats Arman this weekend. So it really just made me want to go back and look at all the longest win streaks in UFC history and who got them, how impressive they were. Let me know what you guys think in the comments about these win streaks, and who do you guys think is going to be the one to break Anderson Silva's win streak? Will it be a guy like Tom Aspinall? Will it be a guy like Bilal Muhammad or Merab? Or will it be a guy like Islam Makhachev? Ilia Topuria? There's a lot of guys on the horizon, but in modern day UFC, I will say one of the hardest things to do is go on a long win streak, just because everybody in modern day UFC is so well rounded, and it's just so much easier to get beat these days than it used to be back in the day, in my opinion. So I do think that if Islam does not break this record, it's likely to stand for a long time. But either way, let me know if you guys enjoyed the video by leaving a like on it. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. I post daily content. I also do daily MMA streams. So come hang out with your boys. See me in the streams. Got the glasses on. Leave a like for that. I'm out, boys. Thank you for watching. Peace.